Hello, my name is Dr. Matthew Robinson. I'm a professor at the University of Delaware and also serve as the academic director for United States Soccer Coaches Master Coach and Soccer Leader courses, as well as the International Coaching Enrichment Certificate Program, an international coaching program funded through the United States Olympic Committee and the International Olympic Committee. The topic I'd like to talk about today is the changed landscape and the building of the sport club for the future. Now, my perspectives in terms of making this presentation, I am a former college athlete, a college coach, and also have been involved with youth coaches. I've worked across 6 different sports with our national governing bodies here in the United States in the area of athlete development. I've also worked with over 18 sports in over 100 countries through my work with the United States Olympic Committee, as well as the IOC. I've also served as an NCAA Division I athletic director at the University of Delaware. I'm an experienced coach developer. I've served as a consultant working with a variety of youth organizations, intercollegiate athletic departments, as well as professional sports franchises and events. And lastly, I've done a great deal of research in the area of sports consumer behavior. I'd like to think that I bring all these experiences in to share with you today the idea of the future of sports clubs. Albert Einstein said, "Everything has changed except the way that we think." And his definition of insanity was doing the same thing repeatedly and expecting a different result. Well, the landscape has changed, and we need to change with it. Some things about that we've noticed as far as the changed landscape include that in the United States, you see a decline in education-based sports. You see sports programs being cut by high schools and junior high schools, and some athletic departments not even existing. Second with this, you've seen a reduction in volunteerism. People are very busy, that they're not willing to give their time, but rather have somebody do it for them. As I like to say, there's not many 9-to-5 jobs anymore. And so this idea of having people volunteer and being involved in the sport environment is reducing. You've seen a professionalization of the sport club industry. You've seen for-profits and those for-profits merging. You see for-profits taking over nonprofits. You see the importance of branding that's associated as far as sports clubs are concerned. And you're seeing this idea that a lot of a major revenue stream includes sponsorship opportunities. And to expand those sponsorship opportunities, you're seeing clubs become franchised, that they're creating a presence almost in the McDonald's model around the country, if not the world. Next, you begin to see the sport club coach and the leader becoming professions, that they are becoming full-time jobs. As I mentioned before, that's tied to the reduction in volunteerism, that even though there's still a reliance upon volunteer coaches as well as some part-time coaches, when you take a look at the magnitude of a sport organization and a club, then in some cases they're million-dollar businesses, and they need full-time people devoting all their energies to that club in order for that club to be effective and successful. Also along with this is the emphasis and specialization of athletes. We're seeing at younger ages that there's an emphasis placed that one athlete should put all their eggs in one basket and pursue that sport. Along with that, you see parents much more engaged in the sport environment than ever before. That they're very concerned, they're committing money, and they're very concerned about the outcome of the experiences for their kids with an ultimate destination, whether it be a college scholarship or maybe trying to become a professional athlete. You're seeing more legal and ethical challenges that have been created as far as the sport environment is concerned. There have been lawsuits levied against the sport clubs, against coaches, and against a variety of organizations based upon whether it be contractual issues or risk management issues or not living up to the duty of care that's owed as far as liability is concerned. Also in recent years, because of a Jerry Sandusky and Larry Nassar, you're seeing increased public awareness for the mental, physical, and sexual abuse of sports participants and the importance of being placed on providing a safe environment. And again, when we talk in terms of background checks and appropriate supervision, it's very important as far as a safe environment is being provided. And in terms of the U.S., our preeminence is being challenged by international competitors. You could argue that we've always had a great head start because we've had a large gross domestic product. We have a strong sports culture, but we're seeing other countries catching us, in some cases passing us, because maybe they're doing things better than we are. Now, what we do and how we do it when we talk about the club of the future. As you can see that slides around our circle here, that the club of the future is that we need to know what we stand for. We need to know why we do what we do. We also need to know ourselves, who our stakeholders are, and seek to understand before being understood. Now, within the club of the future, these are some areas that we'll be talking about with the different courses or sessions we'll be offering with our course. We'll look at your leadership of a club. We'll talk about the culture that you're going to try to develop within your club. We'll talk about having a clear philosophy and mission and knowing what your purpose is for your club. We'll talk about the programs that are being offered and why they're being offered and what are being done in those programs. We'll talk about developing a clear, logical pathway for your athletes to move from the very younger stages all the way up to the highest competitive levels. We'll talk about the importance of your marketing efforts as far as your understanding your product and knowing your pricing, how to promote your product, and where you're delivering that product. And then lastly, we'll talk about the education of your stakeholders, making sure that our coaches are educated, making sure that our parents are educated, and making sure our athletes are educated as far as the program is concerned. All of these things are going to be essential in the club of the future. So what are successful clubs? The one way to look at it is a theoretical framework that I developed that's the variables leading to sport club success. We call it the VOWST analytical model. When we look at the VOWST analytical model, we talk in terms of a classic input, throughput, output model. That at the input level, and these are sessions, again, that we'll be covering later, that we'll talk about your organization and your structure. How is the organization well run? Is it a nonprofit or for-profit? Was it board managed and governed? All those things. And is it run well? Are you following the policies that have been established? We'll talk about the financial support. Do people in your area have the money to pay for the clubs? Is there enough money as far as whether it be public monies that are help supporting it? And then we'll talk about customer service, making sure that our customers are reaching those customers and giving them a product that they want. And then also we'll talk about foundation and participation, where our athletes are coming from. I like to ask the question often with the sports club is, if it's an individual sport, where do you rank as far as the popularity of your sport in that area? For example, are you getting the best athletes coming in, or is your sport not that popular in that area, and you're only getting maybe third and fourth of the quality of athletes? And are you going to accept that, or are you going to be proactive? We'll talk about the throughputs. What are your training facilities? Are they adequate? Are they accessible? Okay, they're easy to get to for your customers. We'll talk about this idea of coaching provision and coach development. Can coaches be compensated? And are we developing them and truly making them professionals, or actually making them well-educated volunteers, if that's the case? So that they're understanding what their responsibilities are, understanding the roles in the different developmental stages. And all the research says that a good coach, a well-trained coach, ends up becoming a good coach who stays, and it also enhances the experience for those who play under him or her. We'll talk about the external competition. What are the training to competition ratios? Do they vary across the different developmental stages? We'll talk about science-based practices. Are we an understanding of training loads based upon the age and development? Okay, are we incorporating sports psychology? Are we incorporating sports nutrition? Do we understand the importance of recovery as far as our athletes are concerned? We'll talk about athletic and post-career support. Is there any way to create, if there's an athlete who wants to be involved with your sport that doesn't have the financial means, is there a way to make your club accessible to them as far as financial aid is concerned? What are the terms of those financial aids? We'll talk about parental engagement. Parents are involved. And how do we engage with them in a positive way to ensure that both the athlete, the parent, and the club all benefit from that relationship? And then lastly, we'll talk about athlete identification and development systems. This idea of a clear logical sequence that runs and permeates throughout the organization, so that when an athlete finishes up their stages, say 6 to 8 years old, then when they're past the 8 to 10-year-old age group, it's building upon what was done in that previous stage. Okay? And so ultimately, all these variables are associated with a club achieving success. That leads into the next point. What is success? We'd like to say, in terms of the outputs, begin with the end in mind. How are we measuring our success? What is our goal when we started? And what's the priority? So if we take a look at right now, each one of these could be one of your outputs that you're aspiring for in your club. But in each club, the ranking and the prioritization of those may vary. So when we talk about player development, is it making the players better? Is it about retention? Is it keeping kids engaged in your club through the entire lifetime of their career, which may be up to 12 years? Are we talking about your club having success as far as winning tournaments and leagues, or maybe state and national titles? Are we talking about national success? And like I said, is it moving beyond the local area that you're a nationally recognized club? Are we talking about developing your local soccer culture? Is it the case that you want the sport to grow strong within your area? And are we also contributing to a national sport or soccer culture That being that the sport overall becomes popular and it continues to excel as far as sport is concerned in the country. And then lastly, is it a case of revenue? Are we looking to generate revenue? You know, at the end of the day, whether you're nonprofit or for-profit, you still have to pay your bills. And this idea of revenue coming in and looking to profit, or at the worst, breaking even, becomes important. So what are the outputs? What matters to you? At the end, we talk about minding the gap. That as we go through these different sessions talking about the future of the sport club, again, we need to know what we want to be. And then we need to look at those organizations that maybe are ahead of us or maybe behind us, and what we need to do in order to catch them or prevent them from catching us. So it's really neat when you put this Olympic sprint here at the end, they can see that winner. Hey, that guy in second place is coming up on him. But if you take a look at the back, the guy that's fifth, what's he have to do in order to catch that guy at number one? And we'll be talking about that, of thinking strategically and putting your time and effort and resources into areas that you can grow, that you're slowly going to narrow that gap, and eventually you're going to pass. Or like I said, if it's the case you're on top, what do you need to continue to do strategically to remain at that position? So when we talk about the future of the sports club, some things we'll be looking at is the rise of the multi-sport club. And an emphasis is being promoted by our United States Olympic Committee and looking for partnerships across sports. And we'll talk about this from going from the grassroots all the way up to elite levels. We'll talk about the potential of accreditation of clubs. That at this point, they are businesses, and right now there is no level of accreditation across the country or within individual sports. We'll see that within our sports clubs, that more are going to be asked of them, that they may be addressing education, okay, or promoting values. And it's not just about the sport itself. And again, remember we talked about early on that the education-based sports are going away, and education-based sports always emphasize education. We'll be looking at the licensing and education of club coaches and leaders for the future. Currently, right now, there's a number of national governing bodies that offer licensing courses, but it doesn't mean that if you don't have a license, you can't coach. But you may see that there's going to be licensing that's going to be involved, especially in the area of the safe sport area. The licensing will involve basically going through training to ensure that you're fulfilling your responsibilities as a coach in promoting the well-being of those athletes under your charge, but then also getting the idea of giving the appropriate concepts, theories, tactics that are associated with the developmental stage. You're going to see an increased respect for the club coach because they have those licensing. You'll see the future emerging of clubs and also the franchising of clubs. But again, this idea that the club sport is taking on a lot more responsibility in our environments than before, and these are some of the things that will go along with the growth of that industry. So I'd like to take this time to thank you and welcome you and invite you to join the other courses that are related to the development of the Club of the Future. And again, I'll be hosting a number of these, and I'm looking forward to interacting with you to help you become a better professional, to ensure that you're doing the best that you can be and offering the best opportunity as far as your athletes are concerned.